Automobile nets are generally used in pairs. And notice how they're laid out here when there's a job to be done. The wheels of that truck are going to stop right in the center of each net. Now let's take a look at the other part of the rig, the bridle. Bridles are simply wire cables held apart by spreaders. The trick is to have the spreaders wider than the truck so that the wire cables won't cut into the sides of the body when it's lifted. On the bridle they're hooking up here, there are two sets of wire legs, one set longer than the other. These men are being careful to hook the longer set to the rear of the truck. In a second, you'll see why. And here's your answer. The strain is taken on the short legs first. If it wasn't, the front of the truck would remain on the ground and act like a pivot, which might make the whole truck swing into the side of the ship. Also, this tilted position will give you added clearance when your working space is tight. Here's a weapons carrier ready to be loaded. Instead of using rope nets, the men are going to use the same bridle setup with wire straps attached. These straps are made of heavy wire cable with an eye spliced in each end. You've got to use your head when attaching straps because they've got to be spotted under some part of the truck that can take it. Under the frame so that it's kept from slipping off by the bumper. The rear strap is also passed under the frame of the truck, on a line with the rear axle. Those wire straps could dig in pretty deep, and to keep them from damaging the sides, the men use dunnage. See that the draft gets off to a good start. Keep an eye out for a slipping cable or for dunnage coming out of place. Up she goes, front end first. No chance of pivoting because, as always, the longer wires have been hooked to the rear of the truck. Straps are easy enough to place, but you've got to know the strong points and the weak points of all kinds of vehicles. Here's a really big baby. When you get one like this, put the strap under the frame. If you put it through the rear spring, you'll have added protection against it slipping off when the truck swings through the air. The load goes aboard. And now you can see that it doesn't matter what you use, rope nets, wire straps, or both, handle them right, and one's as good as the other. Getting trucks down into the hold is only half the battle. Stowing them is the other half, and a tough one. They can't be driven into position because the gas tanks are empty, and a lot of the mechanical parts have been sealed to prevent damage. You'll have to use muscle, plus your thinking cap, to get them safely in place in the shortest possible time. This truck is light enough to be pushed toward the spot where it's to be stowed. But to get it exactly in place would mean a lot of maneuvering back and forth, almost like trying to park at a curb in a tight squeeze. That would take too much time. The thing to do is to use the ship's equipment, the winch, the cargo fall, and a pulley set up like this. It's just a question of rigging and using your head to save your muscles. The clamp, which has a ring or eye for hooking the snatch block, is bolted to a stanchion. After the clamp is made fast, the snatch block is hooked into the ring and a strap is placed so that it'll run on the sheave of the block. This is a single block arrangement and won't add to your pulling power, but it will guide the movement of the truck as it's pulled into position. One end of the strap is attached to the rear of the truck. The other end, which has already passed through the snatch block, is fastened to the cargo fall. Soap is spread along the path the truck wheels will take, and whenever possible, it's put on a board to help keep the floor of the hold clean. The soap will make the truck skid along easily and keep the tires from being damaged. A signal to the winchman on deck, and he takes up on the cargo fall slowly. Down below, the truck starts to move toward the side of the hold. Nice and easy on the pull, so the truck won't go crashing into the side of the hold. And that winch had better be stopped at exactly the right moment. Now the men can jockey the truck into position against the bulkhead and flush against the sides. Not an inch of space wasted. Remember to use the ship's gear, and you can always make the job that easy. Loading a mess of tanks, even the biggest of them, is just as easy as swinging a few jeeps over the side, maybe easier. Here's how it's done. These men are using heavier straps than they used before, and they've got a special rigging spot picked out that can really take the strain between the track and bogie wheels. On tanks like this, no dunnage is necessary. The sides will take any kind of pressure you want to give them. And the rigging takes only 2 straps. The second strap is slipped between the track and bogie wheels at the rear of the tank. This job has to be as safe as we can make it, so the ends of the straps are shackled to the bridles. And the shackle pins are held in place by wires so they won't slip loose. Keep your eyes on those straps when the cargo fall takes up. Stand by to see that the strain is taken at exactly the right spot if you don't want to put that blitz buggy out of action before it gets into it. Okay, we're in the air. Notice that unlike trucks, tanks have to travel on an even keel. That's done by making both straps the same length and placing them equal distances from each end of the tank. Well, so much for rigging and hoisting tanks. Nothing to it if you know your way around. But there's a tougher job coming up. Stowing them inside the hold. Here's a 40-ton metal giant, much bigger and heavier than the one you just saw swung over. But before it lands, even this baby is easy to maneuver. Always head a tank in the direction you want it to go, then set it down. And that's where the tank's going to be stowed. Trying to push it there would be like trying to move a stone wall. So these men take a hint from the way the trucks were stowed and use a block and fall arrangement to do the actual pulling. They use a strap, which is really a piece added to the cargo fall. It has an eye spliced into each end to fasten it to the rest of the gear. They start the job by putting a shackle over one eye of the strap. A hook is then set in place and fastened with a shackle bolt. Another shackle is bolted to the pad eye on the bulkhead, onto which the hook and strap rigging is attached. The other end of the strap is set to run on the sheave of a snatch block. The eye is left free because it's going to be attached to the cargo fall. The snatch block is brought back and hooked over the first shackle, like this. Now, a second snatch block is attached to the loop, and the hook is hung from it, which will be hooked up to the front of the tank. That's our block and fall setup, twice as strong as a direct pull. Here you get a picture of the complete rigging, with the strap attached to both the tank and the cargo fall. The cargo fall is taken up, and the heavy tank rolls forward, moving on its own track. This operation has to be done in several steps, because as the tank nears the bulkhead, the block attached to the front of the tank closes in on the one hooked to the pad eye until they nearly touch. That means the block on the tank will have to be moved to some other position to separate the two blocks and make room for another forward pull. After the tank is pulled forward, the rear end will have to be skidded over to the side of the hold. The same type of block and fall arrangement is used. Soap is spread on the dunnage to reduce friction as the tank is slid sideways. And there she goes, against the bulkhead and flush against the sides. A perfect stowing job. This iron horse weighs 70 tons, yet getting it aboard is still a simple matter if you know what equipment to use and how to use it. Here, a locomotive bar is doing the job instead of straps. It fastens onto the locomotive in two special places that are strong enough to take the strain. As the locomotive is lifted over the ship's side and lowered to its cradle on deck, the men take their positions and guide it into its resting place. The cradle is made of lumber and is anchored to angle irons which have been welded to the deck. Once in place, the locomotive is tied down securely to pad eyes on the deck and is ready to ride safely through even the roughest ocean voyage. Remember, whatever you're loading, there's an easy, efficient, and speedy way of doing it. Learn to do it that way.